day everyone, and welcome to the seminar on enhancing the potential of Microsoft Outlook. So in today's seminar, we're sort of going to go over these bits regarding Outlook. So firstly, we'll go over what Outlook is for a start, a bit about the background of how it operates, then we'll be transitioning into sort of how to access Microsoft Outlook, and then how to actually use the product itself. And then lastly, we are going to go over some of the known limitations regarding Outlook, and then some third-party ways of how you can enhance Outlook outside of the product itself. So the first thing to note about Outlook is it can sometimes be referred to as also Microsoft Exchange as well. So these are fundamentally two different products, but the terms have become fairly interchangeable over the years. So Microsoft Outlook is actually the name of the app you would use to access your email. So the actual email service itself, the thing that provides for sending and receiving of your emails, is called Microsoft Exchange. The reason it's important to know the difference between these two is because whenever you're looking at official Microsoft documentation, they'll make a quite clear distinguishing difference between the terms they use. So whenever you are looking, for example, at licenses and choosing which license you want for your users, Microsoft will refer to your email system as Microsoft Exchange, not Outlook 365. So it's just important to know that difference because you'll see the two, and then whenever you're looking at Microsoft official documentation or licensing information, it will show up as Microsoft Exchange. That is the name of your email system. Whereas Microsoft Outlook is the name of the app you would use to access Microsoft Exchange. It's important to note, though, that fundamentally the two are sort of designed to work side by side. They are designed with each other in mind, so they'll be as efficient as possible. Whenever you are using your Microsoft Exchange account, it will always be best to access that through the official Outlook app, because that's the way it's been designed to work. Although that is not to say that you can't use your Exchange account on another third-party app, and it's not to say you can't use your Gmail account in your Outlook app as well. So although they are fairly universal, they are fundamentally designed to work in tandem with each other. So moving on to how we would actually go about accessing your emails for the Outlook app itself. So the first way we have is the Outlook mobile app. So by doing it this way, it's the best way to get your access to emails on your phone, obviously on the go. So obviously you can always access that through the Apple Mail app, for example, or the Samsung Mail app, which we have found customers do quite often. However, there is becoming a limitation on doing that. So we would always recommend using the Outlook mobile app instead. So from there, you'll be able to access your work calendar, your work emails, events, and your contacts. And it's a great way of separating your work life from your personal life. Now, what we found in the last couple of years is people have been increasingly adding their work email to their personal phone, and that's no problem. But what they might be doing is adding that to their Apple Mail account, for example. Now, the trouble you will run into when you do that is products like Apple and Samsung try and make your life as connected as possible, and will try and connect all your personal accounts to your business account as well. So what we found is when people have been removing their work emails from their phones and no longer want that on there, it will also bring over a load of personal stuff, and you might lose some of your personal data as well. That can go both ways. By connecting your personal life to your work life, too much of your work stuff might be appearing in your personal life as well, so that might be a leak in company data. So therefore, we would always recommend using the Outlook official app for your phone whenever you're trying to access your emails on there. The app is free, so you can also log into your Gmail on that as well. You won't need a license to use that app, so just download it from your App Store or Play Store, sign into your work account, and that's easy as that. The next version of Outlook is Outlook for Mac. So the reason this is getting its own category is it's fundamentally quite different to the Outlook for Windows version. They might look fairly similar to start with, but however, when you start looking at the settings for the app itself, they become quite different. The Mac OS version has to conform to quite Apple standards whenever it comes to the design of the app and how it runs. And there's also a lot less customization you can perform in these settings in the Mac version as well. There is also one notable limitation on using Outlook on your Mac, but we will go over that at the end of the seminar. However, whenever you're accessing your Exchange emails on your Mac, we would still always recommend using the Outlook app as opposed to signing into something like Apple Mail. Again, for the same reason I just listed, it's a good way of separating your personal life from your work life. So the third way we have to access our emails is through the Outlook web version. So in order to access this, go to office.com, and then Outlook should be on the left-hand side here. If we go over to the top, from here we will be able to see that we can access our emails. We'll just be able to access our emails like we would do on the app. We can send, receive, manage our settings, create forwarding rules, all that type of stuff. So the web version is probably the most universal version of accessing your emails. What I mean by that is it doesn't really matter what device you're on. You could be on a mobile, desktop, tablet, Amazon Fire tablet, for example, which doesn't have any apps on there. As long as you've got a web browser, a connection, and your web browser is fairly up to date, you should be able to log into your account through outlook.office.com and then be able to access your work emails from there. It's also arguably one of the safest ways of accessing your emails if you are accessing it from a device you are unfamiliar with. So there might be a time, for example, when you need to access your emails, you don't have access to your phone, for example, or your laptop. So you would maybe borrow a friend's device or log into a device at a hotel, for example. What you don't want to do is log into that device and have it download all of your work email history, because then when you come to delete your account, it might not always delete all the information off that system. So in that case, we would recommend using the Outlook web version instead, OWA. When you sign into this browser, you can just sign into your account, access all the emails you need to, send, receive whatever you need to. And then when you come to sign out of that account, nothing is left on that device. Everything is done through the web browser. Nothing is downloaded locally to the computer. So when you do come to sign out, you'll know that everything is fully signed out, and there won't be any remaining company data on that device. So the last way we have to access our emails is obviously through the Outlook Windows version. So this will be the most familiar version that people are used to using. It's probably the most customizable version as well, probably the most feature-rich. There are a ton of different customization options, which we will go over in a second. And a lot more options to choose from in terms of settings as well for your account. So sort of just some key points over accessing your emails and the Outlook app. So the web version is best whenever you don't need to leave a trace of your company information on that device. It's also the most universal version, so you can access it on virtually any device as long as there's an internet connection and a web browser on that device. The mobile app is best for accessing your emails on the go. You'll get little notifications through there, and it's a great way of separating your work life from your personal life. Same goes for the Mac version as well. It's a great way of separating the two. It's not as powerful as the Windows version, and it's slightly separate with the way it operates, but fundamentally, it's still a great app to have on your Mac if you're accessing your emails from that device. And then obviously Outlook for Windows, the Windows app we've just seen, it provides the richest experience. You have the most options when it comes to settings, view customization, and all that type of stuff. Another important thing to note regarding your emails, like we've mentioned the online version won't download any local copy of your emails. However, when you sign into something like Outlook for your desktop, same goes for Mac as well, it will download all your emails to that device so you can access them offline. So just something to note as well, if maybe storage is a consideration when you're choosing how to access your emails. If you're quite low on storage and you want to add your emails to that device, it's probably best to do that through the web version, just so that the desktop version doesn't take up that remaining storage. So next we'll be moving on to licenses. So fundamentally, Outlook or Microsoft Exchange is a paid service by Microsoft. So there are two ways of looking at it. So the first way is the Exchange Online licenses. So what this will do is give you just access to an email account. It won't give you access to any frills like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, anything like that. It will purely give you access to a Microsoft Exchange account and let you access the Outlook for the web version. It won't let you access Outlook for the desktop version, something worth noting on here. Exchange Online Plan 1 is best whenever you just need to access your emails. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you have a system, an automated system that sends out emails periodically, then you would use an Exchange Online Plan 1 because email is just required, none of the other Office apps will be required. Exchange Online Plan 2 is essentially like Plan 1, but with a much increased mailbox size. So this is great to add as an additional license to your Business Basic or Business Standard account whenever you need to increase the size of your mailbox. Business Basic and Business Standard are the next level of licenses you can get. These will include things like Word, PowerPoint, and Excel as well. So this is probably what most employees will be using as opposed to automated systems. So Business Basic will only give you access to the web version of Outlook. So that is to say this version here. So you will not be able to access the desktop version like this. If you did want to access that, then you would have to log into the Business Standard license instead. So just something worth noting whenever you're making your choices, but obviously if you are sort of unsure about which license to choose, speak to your account manager and they can point you towards the best option for your user or for your business. So moving on, there are a couple of different types of mailboxes we can choose when we are creating our accounts in Microsoft Exchange. The first type is a user mailbox. So this is what most people will be familiar with. This is an account you would sign into with a username and password. So from here, you can send and receive emails. This, for example, would be a user account. Next, moving on to that is a shared mailbox. So this would be used for something like inquiries at or sales at, where customers would send you emails and multiple people would need to access that inbox and deal with those emails. It's also a good way of having multiple accounts without having to have multiple licenses. So a shared account or shared mailbox is a fundamentally free mailbox. However, it does need to be accessed by someone with a user mailbox. You are unable to log into a shared mailbox with a username and password. It has to be given access to a user mailbox instead. Next, we've got a distribution group. So this is a way of sending emails to multiple people at once inside your organization without having to add them to the CC line every time. So for example, if you needed to share general information about the company, such as the office closing due to bad weather, you would create a distribution group for the entire company and then send a single email to the distribution group, and that email would go to all the recipients in that group. So the way I like to sort of describe it to people is it works fundamentally like this. When you send a distribution group, it is the same way as if you just sent an email individually to that person. However, it does that en masse to multiple people. So these people would be on a CC line on a regular email, but instead of doing that, we've done it for a distribution list instead. There's no way of logging into a distribution list and see a history of what's been sent, because it's the equivalent of sending someone an email directly instead. Next, we've got a shared mailbox. So this would be, let's say we send an email to a shared mailbox. These three people will be able to log into that mailbox, all view that one single email, and then either reply to it or forward it on as they need to. So let's move on to the actual Outlook app now instead. So firstly, there's a couple of different ways we can customize our views in Outlook, sort of better help our way of working. So firstly, we've got the to-do bar, which not many people are aware of. So from here, we've got the we can access our calendar. we can access our contacts, and we can access our tasks all on the right-hand side of Outlook. So what is the benefit of doing it this way? So obviously we can click on our contacts, we can click on our tasks and click on our calendar, all from the bottom here. But the information isn't always straightforward and presented to us as quickly as we might need it to be. So if I go into View, toggling to Do bar, we get a permanent overview of our upcoming appointments and our upcoming tasks that are due as well. So by doing this, having the reading pane on the right-hand side, we've got a permanent reminder of what needs actioning. That way, if we are having a busy day, we can have a quick glance at what needs to be done, and it's not forgotten because we won't have to click onto a separate tab to access that information. It's right there at our fingertips, and it's a great way if you're using tasks or even just calendar. Whenever I have an upcoming appointment, my calendar appointment will be showing up here, and it'll be a quick overview about my day. Next, we have Focused Inbox. So Focused Inbox is a way of Microsoft filtering out your emails based on what it thinks is a priority and what it thinks is more generic information that's not really required for you. So what I mean by that, if I disable this, so by default, Focused Inbox will be turned off for most people. So from here, I can access all of my emails, scroll through them as normal, and then I've got a separate tab for all my unread emails, which I need to action. By turning on Focused Inbox, we switch these columns to Focused and Other. So Focused information we'll see is a little bit more reduced. There's not as many emails in here. That's because the other emails have been moved over to Other. So Microsoft will classify things like automated emails, newsletters, generic content that isn't necessarily directly straight towards you. It will count that as other information and cut that out from your Focused Inbox. The idea being it's a way of prioritizing what it thinks is important to you in your workday and cutting out a lot of the rubbish that might be clogging up your inbox. You will still receive the email. It's purely just a way of filtering out the two, but you will still receive the email the same way. Just to turn it off, go to View, show Focused Inbox, and that should turn it off, and all your emails will be back in your inbox. Next thing we have is conversation view versus single view. So this will be something that most Gmail users will be familiar with, and if you are moving from Gmail to Office 365, this is a feature you might want to use. So as we can see here on the View tab, still we've got Show as Conversations. If we untick that, apply that to our mailbox. So from here we can see the scroll list has got a little bit bigger. So whenever I send an email to someone, someone replies to me and I reply back, we will have separate emails here to show the email chain. So what we do is whenever we receive a new reply to an email chain, that will show up as a brand new email. But what we can do is we can group these into discussions or conversations by going to Show as Conversation. And we can apply this per folder or our entire mailbox. So from here, we can see there's a little drop down next to this email. If I click on this drop down, I can now see that all the emails relating to this thread have been grouped together. This is how most people from Gmail will be familiar with using their inbox. So from here, obviously they can see all the emails, part of this one email chain originating as test email 1. All the emails will appear in this chain and they can quickly refer back to all the correspondence from these users. Another reason to use conversation view would be if you're using categories for your emails. Instead of having to right-click and categorize each email, what we can do is we can categorize an entire conversation in conversation view instead. That way, any new email sent to that conversation will be automatically categorized based on what we selected. And then lastly, relating to views, we can obviously favorite folders as well. So if I go to drafts, for example, that might be a folder I need to use often. I can just drag and drop into our favorites or even archive, drag and drop this into my favorites bar, and that will appear here. I can also right click and unfavorite this folder, just like so. Now, if I'm using a shared mailbox as well, I might want to have access to that inbox quite quickly. So what I can also do is drag this inbox to favorites. And then from here, because we can see I've got two inboxes here, it distinguishes the two by adding the name of that inbox as well. So one is for my personal account and one is for this shared account as well. So if you do have multiple folders with the same name, but over different accounts, Outlook will distinguish the types or the accounts by adding the name of that account as well. So going over some key points about Outlook views. So as we just saw, conversation view is great for keeping email chains together. If you are coming from a Gmail background, these will group all these emails together, so you won't have to scroll through and find which email relates to which chain. It will just group everything together based on replies. You can use your focused inbox to filter out what's work related and probably what's more clutter. So those might be things like newsletters, automated emails, reports, that sort of thing. You can also pin your favorite folders just to have easier access. This is great if you're using shared accounts as well. This is a really important feature to take into consideration. And then lastly, we have the to-do pane. So like we just saw, if we go into view and toggle to-do pane or to-do bar, we have a quick information access to our calendar and our tasks that are due. That way we can ensure that nothing is being missed out and the information is at our fingertips ready to be used. So next up we have how to sort of manage our emails and send emails, receive emails in Outlook. So what we can do, a very nifty feature that moving on from conversation views, what we can also do is if we are in a long email chain, for example, we were originally CC'd into this email chain and it's got to a point where it's no longer relevant to us, but I need to keep a history but none of the new correspondence. So what we can do is, let's say from this point on, this thread is no longer relevant to me, but I'm still on CC and I haven't been removed. What we can do, instead of having to delete each email that comes in, what I can do is right click on that email and just mark it as ignore. So the way this works is it will keep, from the email you click on ignore, it will keep all the previous emails that were sent in that email chain, but any new emails sent to that thread will go straight into your deleted. You can still go back into your deleted and find those emails that were sent, so you can unignore and it will undelete all those emails. But essentially, it's a great way of sort of filtering out long conversation chains if they've no longer become relevant without having to manually delete each one, which is especially useful if you're using conversation view, because then you won't have to delete the entire conversation. Next, going into managing our emails. So as you can see, I've got a shared mailbox. If I wanted to send from HPT inquiries right now, I'd have to click on HPT inquiries, new email, and that will change it to from HPT inquiries. However, there's no way of confirming whether I am sending from my account or I'm sending from my personal account. So to change this, just go to the options tab and select the from address right here. So as we can see, even though I clicked on HPT inquiries, it's not actually sending from my account. So what I want to do is go to options, toggle from, and then that way I can always confirm which account I'm sending from. So if I click on the from drop down, other email address, and I won't need to type the entire email address, I can just type in the name of that account. It will make sure I've got access to that account before I can send from it. Once it's checked I've got access to that account, it's let me choose it from the from drop down. So if I click on this drop down again, I can see I've got access to this account. It will save it for next time, so I won't have to keep typing in that email address and searching for it. So that's a great way of choosing which email address you're sending from if you've got access to multiple at once. What we can also do in Outlook is, before we send an email, we can sort of tailor the delivery of that email based on how we prefer it. So the way we can do that is we go to delay delivery. So from here we can do not deliver by. So what is meant by that is whenever we set this option up, that email will get sent at that specific time. So this is great if you want to send an email to someone, but you don't have to bother them. You might want to wait for the next day, but you might forget to do it. So instead of having to wait for that email, leave it in your drafts, what you can do is you can set a delivery time and it will deliver that email at the specified time instead. So from there, obviously just go to options, delay delivery, and you can set a date and time for that email to be delivered. What we can also do is we can control the flow of the replies by specifying who should be the reply to that email address. So for example, if I'm sending an email from inquiries to a customer, but I want that reply from that email to come personally to me directly, what I can do is have reply sent to, and I can set that to me instead. So it's a great way of sort of controlling the flow of those emails, whether it's me sending automatically at a set time or controlling the flow of the replies of that email as well. From this properties box, we can also see we've got many other options we can play with, such as voting, a receipt for delivery as well. And we can also set the importance of the email and sensitivity of the email from here as well. So actually, following on from actually accessing our accounts, one thing to note we've mentioned is accessing a shared mailbox. So if you have access to a shared mailbox and you're accessing it through the desktop version of Outlook, this should automatically appear on the left-hand side here. It might appear minimized, but all you have to do is scroll down to the bottom, unminimize it, and you'll have access to that shared inbox right there. But something that puts people off a lot from using the web version of Outlook is not being able to access the shared mailbox they need to. What we can actually do is access a shared mailbox from the web version. So to do this, go to outlook.office.com, click on your profile at the top right-hand side, and open another mailbox. Again, I won't have to type in the full email address, just type in the name of the account, click on open, and again, as long as I've got permission to that account, it will open it as a new tab. So like I said, something that's discouraged a lot of people from using the web version is they think they're not able to access their shared mailbox, so they stick to the desktop version instead. However, as we've just seen, we can access another inbox or a shared mailbox through the web version by opening it in a new tab. So instead of having to do that every time, what we can do is we can simply bookmark this page, and then that way we can access this shared mailbox every time. This is also really important to know when you are making your license choices. If you are choosing a web-only license, so Exchange Online Plan 1 or Business Basic, what you can do is you can access those shared mailboxes by doing this method just now. So there's some key points on that. So we can opt out of long email chains or irrelevant email chains by right-clicking and ignoring it. It will keep a history of that email chain from the point I clicked ignored, and then any new correspondence will go straight into my bin. As long as your bin doesn't expire within 30 days, we can still recover those correspondence before they get automatically deleted. What we can also do is set the options on the email before we send it to control when it gets sent, and also the replies as well from that email, who they get redirected to. So let's move on to actually managing our mailbox in Office 365. So we've talked a bit already about categories. So let's go into what those actually mean for Outlook. So for example, this email here, we've categorized it as being relevant to finances. So categories are something that I would set for myself, but not something that I universally set. So if I right click on an email, go to categorize, and then all categories. So from here, it will give me a set of default categories named color 1, color 2. But what I can do is I can also create my new categories, and I can have as many as I want. I'll just be limited on the number of colors I can choose from. That's no problem at all. So from here, I've created my own categories, and it's a way for me to group information related to probably finances or Project X, for example. So I've categorized this email as being related to finances, but why wouldn't I just upload that to a folder instead? So the reason I would create a category as opposed to putting this email in a folder is because categories actually work on different aspects of Microsoft Outlook as well. So for example, I've got a recurring meeting every week, but I need to know what this meeting is about. Sure, I can give it an appropriate title, but what I can also do is right click on it and categorize it as being related to Project X. Another thing I can do with categories is in contacts. I can also categorize separate contacts as well, depending on how I need to use them. So other than putting emails in folders, we can also categorize different types of resources in Outlook, such as contacts and recurring meetings, or just meetings in general. So the reason we would do this is, let's say I would categorize it as a particular project or a particular case I'm working on. What I could do is create a category for that case, assign different meetings with that category, different contacts related to that case, and different emails related to that case. And then when it comes to reviewing all the information about that project or case, I can simply go to search and then find all the relevant resources for that particular category. So it's a great way of categorizing multiple bits of information in Outlook other than just sticking an email in a folder. So what we can also do is prioritize our emails in Outlook as well. So for example, let's look at this email here. I've flagged it as being high importance, maybe Ben has flagged it as being high importance. So what I can do to manage these emails, so let's say this email here, it's a really important email I need to reply to or action, but I just simply don't have time to manage it now, and I don't want to forget it, and it might be a bit of a hassle to create a reminder in my calendar, sort of have a look at this email. So what I can do is I can right click on this email, follow up, and let's say I need to follow this up by the end of this week. So from here, we can see in our tasks that are due, I've got one email I have to follow up by the end of the week and one email I have to follow up by the end of the day. So this way I will get reminders, and I can also set reminders without having to set a flag as well. So if I right click on the email and I do follow up, I can also add a reminder to that email as well. So that way I can set a flag to follow up or forward or reply, whatever needs to happen. And these can also be set for shared mailboxes as well. So as important as they are for you to manage your emails, they're also really important to manage, let's say, an inquiries mailbox. So let's say 10 people have access to an inquiries mailbox. You need a way of sorting what is dealt with, what is due to be dealt with. So what we can do is we can set different categories in this mailbox instead. So if we go to follow up, what we can do is add a reminder. And let's say I need someone from my team to forward this email on by the end of the week. So now we've just set a reminder for someone in my team to forward this email on by the end of the week. Now, to make sure that this is actually being dealt with, what we can do is right click on this email, follow up, and we can mark as complete. That way we've let my team know that this has been completed on this date by X person, 5 related messages. And that way we can see what has been completed, part of that conversation chain as well, if it's related to multiple emails relating to an email chain. So continuing on with managing our mailbox, if we go over back to the web version of Outlook. So if we go to the little settings icon at the top right hand side here, view Outlook settings, general, and in storage, we can check the storage of our mailbox and currently how much we are using as part of our license. So this is something quite important to do with your mailbox, sort of stay on top of your size. The reason being is Microsoft will alert you when you are running out of storage on your mailbox, but it doesn't always do so at the promptly time, or if it does, maybe the notifications might get missed out, because they're not the most obvious to spot. When you do run out of storage on your mailbox, it just won't accept any new emails, so you won't be able to receive any more correspondence from people. The same goes with shared mailboxes as well. So what you might want to do is maybe every month or every couple of months, just go into the online version, just check the amount of storage you're using. That way you can stay on top of your mailbox size And by doing it in the web version as opposed to the desktop version, we can also see which folders are taking up the most storage as well. So from here, we've got a couple of different options. We can choose any emails older than 12 months, or we can go through that folder because we know it's taking up the most storage, go through it and find out what's using the most storage. Typically though, when we are trying to clean down our mailbox and we need to save on storage, what we can do is filter out by attachments. So again, if we do this in the online version, because this will give us the most accurate reading of our mailbox, we can filter out by attachments. We can filter out by date or by folder, but let's just do attachments for now. So we can see I don't have any emails of attachments currently, but I can filter these out. And then typically what we can do is we can offload these attachments to something else. So a lot of the time when someone sends us an attachment, it's not necessarily important to keep the contents of the email, but it is important to keep the attachment. So we can maybe move these to a server, to our OneDrive, or to a SharePoint area, and we can delete that email. The reason we would do this as opposed to just deleting other emails is emails with attachments. Let's say someone sends me an 8 megabyte PDF, that'll be 8 megabytes of my mailbox taken up, when a normal email will only take up about 200 kilobytes or so. So really, a lot of the damage will be done by people sending you attachments that are maybe no longer necessary or can be offloaded to another system such as a server or SharePoint. And we've had a look at folders as well, but what we can also do is we can create different folders and different subfolders in our Outlook. There's a limitation to this, which I will go over at the end of the seminar as well. But essentially, these are a way of sort of archiving historical emails or recurring emails as well. Let's say you've got a shared mailbox, we can also use it for this as well. So what we can do is, let's say vendor invoices all get sent sales at mailbox. I might want to move all those vendor invoices to that folder there, but any other emails might not relate to those, so I can keep those in the main inbox, move any vendor invoices to that folder specifically. So it's a great way of managing more archived emails as opposed to moving information, because what we prioritize is probably using categories instead. So just some key points on managing your inbox in Microsoft Outlook. So as we've seen, we can apply categories to more than just emails. We can also apply those to contacts and meeting requests as well. That way, when it comes to searching for any information relating to that project maybe, or that case, or any category set, we can search that particular category and get all the resources available to us that we might need to. Next, we saw that we can set flags on emails. It's a great way for us to make sure we are following up on the information, and the same goes for shared mailboxes as well. It's a great way to find out who's dealt with particular emails without having to email or message our colleagues individually to find out if they've dealt with it. What we can do is we can set a flag on that email and someone can mark it as complete when it's been dealt with. It's also good to check your mailbox size periodically, just to avoid being maxed out on your storage and not being able to receive any emails. If we do that in the web version, it'll be a lot quicker than doing it on our desktop, and it will also give us the most accurate reading of our mailbox as well. And lastly, when it does come to clearing down our mailbox and saving on storage, what we can do is we can filter out by attachment first, as our recommended option, and then we can move those attachments to something like a server, SharePoint, or OneDrive, and by just removing the emails with attachments, that should greatly reduce the amount of storage being taken up in our mailbox. So moving on, we'll be learning about Outlook and its calendar system. So if we go over to the calendar tab in Outlook, so from here we can see I've got my calendar here. I can go to home and I can set different views for my calendar. Of course, there's a schedule view as well. So let's go to monthly view. So from here, I can manage all my meeting requests as I normally would, and we can see it's my calendar here on the left-hand side. But let's say you see inquiries, it might have some information related to that, appointments related to that shared inbox. What we can do is we can also tick it. So from here, we can see I've got the inboxes side by side. Now, the problem with that is, let's say I want to schedule a meeting, I want to make sure it doesn't conflict with HPD inquiries. It can be a bit of a pain to keep looking between the two calendars, or maybe let's say we've got 3 calendars, then it might get a bit hard to sort of manage those side by side. To help with this, what we can also do is go to schedule view. So from here, we've got all the calendars on a linear view, and then we can see who's got appointments at specific times or specific dates. What we can also do is go to the View tab along the top, and we'll have the same options as we had in Home, but we've also got the Overlay option as well. So if I click on the private calendar, I also want this one to be overlaid. So from here, we can see all the calendars are on top of each other. So this way, I can manage everyone's calendars from here, but I can also see my other calendars in the background to make sure I'm not causing any scheduling conflicts. So I can select each calendar up here, and it will highlight that color. Whichever one is not selected will be muted instead. So moving on to actually creating appointments within Outlook, if we go back to Home, we've got 2 options. We've got New Appointment and New Meeting. So both can be used fairly interchangeably, but there's a little bit of difference that Microsoft recognises from their end. So firstly, we've got New Appointment. This would typically be used for if you have an MOT appointment, a dentist appointment, something that's individual to you, that people won't necessarily need to be invited to. We can create a new appointment, and that will be put in our calendar. Can also invite people as well, or convert it to a Teams meeting if we needed to. But fundamentally, these are designed to be individual to you and won't necessarily need a meeting invitation, just appointment invitation to be sent out to someone instead. So let's go ahead by inviting some people to this meeting. So let's go ahead and invite Ben, and let's go invite Hayden now. So what we can do is Outlook will tell us if these people are busy or if they are free at this time. So whenever I select a new time, it will tell me if these people are busy or currently working on something. So at this time, there we go. What we can also see is we've also got the room finder on the right-hand side here. So let's say I want to invite the upstairs meeting room. I want to book this out. What I can do is I can see that currently the meeting room is unavailable all day. And I can also see when it's booked out for other days as well. So as we can see in the room finder, it's currently being booked out, and there's no available rooms at these times. If you have multiple rooms or multiple resources, what it should show you is if the availability of those rooms is poor, good, or fair. So this is most important if you have multiple resources you can book out, or such as physical locations, and it will give you an overview of how the space is working out, helping you make a decision on how soon you need to book that meeting. So lastly, on calendars, we need to have a look at the permissions and sharing calendars as well. So to share your own calendar for a start, if we go to right-click Sharing Permissions, so from here we've got a couple of different options. So by default, my organisation will always be here because as standard, people will be able to see when you're busy on your calendar. So what I can do is I can give none, and then no one will be able to see your calendar. People won't be able to see when you've got scheduled time, won't be able to see names of appointments, anything like that. If someone tries to load up your calendar, it will give them an issue or an error saying that they don't have permission to access it. So let's say I want to share my calendar with an individual person instead. So I want to share my calendar with Carol now. So from here, I've got a couple of different options I can choose. So the option for view when I'm busy, when Carol loads up my calendar, she will be able to see that I've got time booked out in different areas, but she won't be able to see the event's location, the title. She'll purely be able to see the time the meeting starts and the time the meeting ends, and that's it. The next option is meeting titles and location. So as the title suggests, she'll be able to see the name of the meeting and where it will be taking place, but she won't be able to see any of the meeting notes, the recipients of that meeting, who's joining, or anything like that. View all details, she will be able to see all of that, plus get access to the link if it's a Microsoft Teams meeting or Zoom meeting or Google Meet. She'll be able to access those details as well. Can edit Carol would be able to edit the events of my calendar. So existing events she'll be able to edit, such as suggesting a new time, suggesting a new meeting place, that sort of thing. And then delegate, lastly, is the most powerful one. So from this is great if you maybe have a PA, for example, managing your calendar. So this will give access to someone to your calendar as if they were you. That would be deleting existing meeting requests, deleting past meeting requests, creating new ones on your behalf. And they can also create new private events on your behalf as well, which won't be shown to your other calendar permissions. But when I share my calendar with people, it will share every past event and every new event as well. What I might want to do is create a new private calendar that will be individual to me, but won't be shared out with the rest of my team. What I can do, however, is I can share my main calendar. Everyone will be able to access my calendar, see the meeting titles and where they might be taking place. But I also want people to know when my private time is being booked out as well. So the structure I would recommend for this is for people to have access to your calendar, go to sharing permissions, my organization, view titles and locations. That way people can see why you are busy and where those meetings might be taking place. I might also want a calendar for private events as well. So I might be going to the dentist next week, but I don't want anyone from my team to know that. But I still want people to know that I'm busy at that time, so they don't schedule any meetings while I'm away. So if I go ahead and share this meeting with, for example, Ben, Billy, and Carol. So they will be able to see who those meetings are with, or be able to maybe just see when I'm busy. So that way they can just see I'm busy at these times, but they won't have any details of the events themselves. So that way I can create a separate calendar for private events and then share my main one, or you can create a shared one and keep your main calendar for private events. That's mostly how you would prefer to work, but you can have multiple calendars for multiple purposes, and it's a great way of sort of segmenting that information as well. So just some key points on managing your calendar. Obviously, we've got different views to suit your working style. For example, we've got the overlay view or the scheduling view. If you are someone's manager and you need to make sure there's no meeting conflicts, or you're trying to find a time when everyone's free for a company meeting, you can use the overlay view or the scheduling view to get an easy access to everyone's calendars at once without having to look at multiple screens. And it's a great way of creating a meeting event that works for everyone. We also talked about appointments being personal to you, such as a dentist appointment or an MOT, whereas meetings are more designed to be shared. We will always send out a Teams meeting link as well when you send those to people. We also saw we can use a scheduling conflict and a room finder to set effective meeting times and find out when those resources are booked out as well. For example, we saw the meeting room was booked out all of this week. We would also be able to see when that meeting room is fairly booked up or less booked up, so we know the urgency of when we need to book our meeting appointment. Lastly, we also looked at how we can share our calendar with the team. This is just a way of increasing transparency, but obviously we can fine-grain those permissions to work how we would prefer it. So we can create a shared calendar or a private calendar and share those details as need be without oversharing our information. So moving on, we'll be going into Outlook contacts a bit. So if we go over to the contacts tab. So from here, a lot of people asked us about the LinkedIn tab appearing here. So the way this works is Microsoft is currently integrated with LinkedIn. This will be always showing up in your contacts bar. There's no way of particularly disabling this feature, but it's not a feature that you have to use or really have to worry about. So what you can do is you can obviously sign into your existing LinkedIn account. And then what this will do is it will synchronize your contacts together. So all your LinkedIn contacts will be brought into your Microsoft account, and all your Microsoft contacts will be brought into your LinkedIn account as well if you ever message people on there. So what this will do is it might not always show the appropriate LinkedIn profile. The reason being, unless you specifically set someone's LinkedIn information in their contact card, what it will do is it will use their name, job position, the company they work at, phone number and address to find the most appropriate profile on LinkedIn. So as we can see, this contact here is fairly generic. Other than I'm in the UK and an email address, there's not much information about this contact for it to find the most appropriate profile. So what it will do instead is it will give me a range of profiles to choose from, which I can then obviously link to my contact card if I did and didn't want to. Moving on from here, we've also got contact groups. So contact groups work very similar to distribution groups. They work in the same way. If I sent an email to my contact group, that email would then get forwarded on individually to each person in that group. It works very differently to distribution lists in the respect that these are personal to me and are not shared by the team. So when I create a new contact group, no one else in my organization will be able to see this group. It's individual to me. The reason you would use these is if you are used to adding multiple people on CC for many reasons, multiple times, instead of adding those people on CC every time, what you can do is create a contact group, add those people to it, and then when you send an email to that group, it will be forwarded on to everyone else. Lastly, in regards to contacts, is just a little bit of a tip and differentiation between contacts and autocomplete suggestions. So what I mean by that is an autocomplete suggestion. When I create a new email, whenever I email that person 1 or 2 times, it will then save that person in my autocomplete. Outlook recognizes that I email that person enough that it would like to suggest it as a contact. So instead of having to type in their email address fully every time, once I start typing the email address, it will appear as a suggestion of an email address I could send that to. However, these are quite different to your contacts. This is just something that Microsoft have picked up, and it's a suggestion based on how many times you've emailed, but it's not a permanent contact in your directory. The reason it's important to know that is autocomplete suggestions are not always permanent, whereas contacts are. So let's say we need to rebuild your mailbox because there is an issue. Chances are your autocomplete suggestion will be lost, and Microsoft will have to relearn which people you email most often, which people you don't. Whereas if you add someone as a contact, it will automatically be backed up by our system, and it will always show up in your contacts list, and it will always show up as an auto suggestion. If you're used to adding or used to emailing the same person or same auto complete every time, instead of having to go to the contacts to have manually adding them, what we can do is we can take this person here, hover over their name, and then what we can do is we can add this person to our Outlook contacts. So instead of having to manually add this contact, we can just use the autocomplete suggestion and then add it to contacts this way to make it a bit faster. So it's just something worth noting that going over Outlook contacts, autocomplete suggestions can be lost. So if you're used to emailing the same person every time, I would suggest adding them as a contact. That way that information is backed up by our system and can be referred back to if your autocomplete results get lost for whatever reason. Secondly, we have a look at the LinkedIn integration into Outlook contacts as well. So as we saw, it will use the information in our contacts page, such as name, email, location, phone number, job title, and workplace. It will use all that information to find the most appropriate LinkedIn profile, but it might not necessarily always be the most accurate of results. Lastly, we saw that contact groups are a great way of sending emails to multiple people at once. It's the equivalent of a distribution list, and it's also the equivalent of adding multiple people on the CC line of your email. So next, moving on, we've got Outlook settings. So these are just a couple of settings you can add to Outlook within the product itself. So let's go over to the web version. It's important to note that whenever you're setting settings on your Outlook, Try and always do it in the web version if you can. The reason being, anything you do in your desktop version might not always reflect in the background. But what it might not always do is, if you're using a shared mailbox, those settings won't always be visible to everyone else. By doing things in the web version, those settings then become shared. They get applied to the account, not your app. And then that way your IT team can also have a look at those settings as well for you. We can have a look at those if they are set in the online version. However, if they are set in the desktop version, we can't always see those. So if we go over to setting in the web version, view or Outlook settings. So firstly, we can set up different rules from here. So we can create different rules. It's a great way of sort of cutting out menial tasks. We can have different conditions. So if an email address or if an email is sent from a specific person or the address includes specific words, we can move those to different folders, delete those and mark those as junk, or we can even categorize those automatically as well. So what we can do is, let's say I receive an email from my payroll team. What I can do is I can give it the finance category by default. That way I don't have to manually do that every time. If we have a look at a rule that already exists in my inbox, so this one is if I receive payslips every month as a PDF format, for example. Let's say I receive emails every month to my email account. Any emails that include the subject line of payslip will automatically get moved to the payslips folder. So if I go over to my payslips folder, we can have a look here. I've just received a new email. Any new emails being redirected to folders will have a little 1 next to it to show that there's a new email. And then from here, we can see this email address, or this email had the subject line of payslips. It followed the rule I set and it moved it to the folder automatically. These are great if you are working in shared mailboxes. You might have a folder per vendor. So you might have a rule to say if an email is received by this vendor address, automatically get moved into this folder. That way it's keeping the main inbox clear and it's sort of categorizing your emails in a bit of a better way as well. Next, moving on to sort of settings, we can do the online version. We can also set an out of office as well. So for example, we can also search for settings as well. So these are called automatic replies in the web version. So firstly, we'll notice we can set a start time and an end time. Let's say I go on a holiday for a week. I might not remember to turn my auto replies off. So what I can do is I can set it to turn off straight away when I get back from holiday. That way I don't have to remind myself to turn it off when I come back. What I can also do is block my calendar for this period. This will just set one long event from the start time to the end time I set. I can also decline any new meeting invitations. So if someone tries to set a meeting up with me while I'm away, it will automatically decline that meeting with this automatic response. And it will also, I can also set the option to decline any existing meetings as well. And again, it will set this response here. What you can also do if you're using a shared mailbox is you can set an automatic response, because when you set one, when someone sends you an email, they'll get an automatic response back, but their original email will still go into your account. So what you can do is you can set one, let's say, for the inquiries at mailbox. So let's say HPT inquiries might have one. So I might want to set an automatic reply to people outside my organization to say, thank you for your email. We have received it and one of our team will be with you shortly. So it's a great way of sending an email back to customers, just to let them know you have acknowledged that you have received their email and you'll get back to them shortly. So automatic replies can also be used for other purposes other than just letting people know you're away on holiday. So going over those, Outlook rules are a great way of reducing menial tasks. We can move emails from different folders based on who they are being sent from or sent to. And we can also set automatic categories of those emails as well, just to prevent us from having to right-click on that email and categorize it every time. We can also set an out of office to inform people that we are away. We can also integrate this with our calendar by getting it to block out our calendar as well. And we can also get it to work not just for letting people know we've gone on holiday, but also to let them know that we have received their email and we'll get back to them shortly. So there are a couple of noteworthy limitations when it comes to Outlook. So the first one we notice a lot is in regards to recording emails. So when someone sends an email by accident, a lot of the time they will try and record that email. The problem with that is it might sometimes work when you're sending to someone in your organization. So you try and record an email, as long as they haven't opened that email, it might be able to be deleted from their inbox before they can read it. However, when you're sending to someone who's maybe on Gmail, then there's no way for Microsoft to delete that email from the Gmail servers. So recording won't always work. In that case, what it will do is it will send a follow-up email to say to that recipient, this email has been sent to you in error, please do not open it and discard it immediately. However, there's no physical way of stopping that person from actually opening your original email. So just something worth noting about recording emails, it doesn't always work when you're sending to people who are on different platforms other than Office 365. Another limitation of Outlook is with regards to folders that I mentioned already. So Outlook is not a filing system. So we can have multiple folders within Outlook. That is not a problem. The error occurs when we become too comfortable with creating very complex folder structures. If we start creating folders within folders, too many times it will slow down our Outlook, because whenever we have to find an email, Outlook will have to look through multiple folders to try and find that. So inevitably, searching will become very slow, and trying to get out that folder structure as well might be a bit confusing and very time consuming for you as well. So whenever you are creating folders in Outlook, try not to make that folder structure too deep, because you might incur some issues later down the line. And then lastly, like I mentioned as well before, the Mac version of Outlook has a different level of support to Windows. So like I mentioned, Outlook on Mac has to conform to different Mac standards. As such, it doesn't work in the same way as Windows. So there's a completely dedicated support team to the Mac version of Outlook. Unfortunately, there's no way for us to log a ticket on your behalf. So let's say you are on Mac, you are using Outlook and you have a really bad issue with it for whatever reason. If you were on Windows, we can log a ticket with Microsoft on your behalf. We would get the standard support times because we are a gold partner. And then we can deal with that ticket on your behalf, speak to Microsoft on your behalf, and obviously deal with that issue. With the Mac version, however, you would have to log a ticket yourself through the Outlook app, and you would have to deal with Microsoft yourself, because there is no way for us to communicate with the Mac team other than doing it through the actual app itself. So just something worth noting when you are choosing a product to use. There are also loads of different ways of enhancing Outlook outside of the app itself and outside of Office 365. So you may have seen on the previous slide, we can set signatures in our settings. But we can also use some software to do that as well. So we would use some software instead of doing it through our settings, because it's a great way of managing everyone's brand at once. So let's say you have your phone number in your signature, your business gets a new phone number. What you might not want to do is ask everyone to change that phone number in their signature, because a lot of people might not get around to do it, or might not know how to do it, or have forgotten to do so. What we can do is we can update everyone's signature at once by using a product called Exclaimer. So this way we can make sure that everyone's got a consistent signature, everyone has the same one with the same branding, and then whenever we do need to update information, we can very easily do that on one signature and it will apply to everyone else's accounts. So using a product called Exclaimer, we can do that very easily without having to rely on people to edit their own signatures, which can cause a lot of confusion. Another bit about Outlook, so Outlook will have a built-in spam filter, but it's very much designed for generic spam and very obvious spam as well. It's not the most intelligent. So by that as well, it's not the most intelligent at spotting phishing attacks and viruses as well. So the easiest way to protect your staff from dodgy emails is to actually train them on spotting phishing attacks. So using a product called USecure, we are able to train the staff in how to spot those phishing attacks, delete them, and report them as spam as well, so that other people in the organisation won't receive those spam emails. Although as important as it is to train your staff on spotting these unwanted emails, it's also just as important to stop them before it ever gets to that point as well. So by using a product called Exclaimer, which is a much more powerful mail filter system than any built-in Outlook one, it reduces a lot of unwanted spam and reduces a lot of unwanted phishing attacks and viruses as well. Outlook won't always spot these obvious phishing attacks, but using a product like EveryCloud, it will be able to filter out those emails and send you a report of those emails without actually forwarding on to your inbox. And lastly, we've got a built-in Office 365 product that we can use. So if we go to office.com, so the product is called Power Automate. So it won't always be available here on hand. So what we'd have to do is go to search for Power Automate. And from here, we can create different automated tasks. They're very similar to rules, other than they work outside of your mailbox. So let's have a look at this rule here, for example. This one will allow us to save attachments to our OneDrive. So all we need to do is sign in and sign in. So what we'd set this rule up for is, let's say my payslips come to my account every month in a PDF format. Instead of keeping those in my inbox and have it save, clog up a lot of storage, what I can do is I can set up a rule so that any emails with my payslip in get automatically saved to an area in my OneDrive, and then that email can automatically get deleted from my Outlook account. That way, I'm automating the process of saving storage on my account and also offloading files to where I might need them, but I won't necessarily need them in my inbox instead. So it's a very powerful tool we can use to automate tasks. It works in shared inboxes as well, and it will work with SharePoint as well. If this is a product you're interested in using for your business, get in touch with the support team and we will talk you through the different options. As we can see, there are a different number of templates we can use, but there are also a lot of custom options we can create as well, depending on how you might want to set up these rules. So get in touch if you're interested in this. And it's a great product if you're using OneDrive or SharePoint for your business. And lastly, there are a couple of different admin features we can set up in the background as well. Now, it's not possible for us to go over all the features because there are a lot of them. But the first one is archiving. This is not only important from a perspective of offloading old emails into an archive. It's also really important from a compliance perspective as well. So archiving policies can also relate to deleting emails past a certain date. So let's say you work in healthcare, your inquiries mailbox sometimes receives patient information. What you might need to do is set up a policy to delete any emails older than 6 months or 12 months, for example, and any emails older than that date will automatically get deleted. That way you are staying compliant with your business's regulatory requirements. Another option we can do, or is automatically being applied now, is restricting email forwarding to keep information in the company. So what is meant by that is a little while back, with the increase of working from home, people would prefer to email or forward on their work automatically to their personal account because that's how they are used to working. That feature has now been disabled from an admin level. So obviously you can forward individual emails to your personal account, but you cannot set up a rule to forward your emails automatically to your personal account. It's just a little way of Outlook making sure the information stays in the company as much as possible without it leaving your work account. And lastly, we can enable visual cues to warn users of external activity. So there's two ways we can do that. So the first way is by enabling a little banner on here. So the reason we would do this is a really obvious way of telling people this email is outside the organization. So this might be very obvious in some circumstances, but it also might be a little bit less obvious when you're dealing with a phishing attack. So let's say this was sent from John at HP Tech. This might say John at HT Tech, might miss out the B. And at first glance, I probably wouldn't notice this typo, but it's obviously a completely different email address to what I'm used to dealing with. And it might say, I need you send me your password, I need to access your account. So at first glance, this might look very much like an email address I'm used to sending to, but by having a visual warning, it's reminding me actually it's not what I'm used to sending to, and then I can have a look at it and find out why that warning is being applied. Obviously, a big warning like this in every email is probably not the most ideal. There are some more subtle ways of enabling this warning if you would prefer. So what we can do is we can set warning in the subject line as well, or external. That way, any emails originating from outside the organization will receive an external warning in the subject line, but any internal emails wouldn't. So just something we can enable on top of that if the big yellow banners or colored banners are maybe a bit too obvious or a bit too distracting. So thank you very much for listening to the Office 365 seminar, and we hope you've learned something today. Thank you.